is Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward, don't forget the oppressed, and when you go to sleep at night.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Dear listeners, dear audience, welcome once again to our time to please Allah. I'm your host for today, Almir Smajlovic. I think you guys are familiar with me for those who watched the show before. Today I am your replacement host, like I said. Ismail is not here, as well as Gabriel. They're both not here, but inshallah, hopefully they will be joining us soon. And today, inshallah, we have a very, very interesting topic. The topic is an amazing topic. Why? Because it affects a lot of us. It affects us in some ways that we need to understand the difference between the two. And we need to understand also when those things are the same, or when those things comply with Islam. What is that exactly? And we are living in a place that is multicultural, that it's a global village. So we get across and we see so many weird things, I could say, comparing to where we are living, for example, in our home countries, in our home, where we are from. Where we are from, we have one culture. But where we are living now, in all over the world, we have so many different cultures. So we need to be able to distinguish culture versus Islam. Or some people like to say, well, certain things, it's cultural Islam. Well, that's actually a wrong thing to say, because we don't have such a thing called cultural Islam. We have things in culture that, of course, are okay to be with deen, with the religion of Islam. For example, one of the things that in culture, some cultures, to wear a kufiya or taghiya, head covering, is part of a culture, so that a Muslim should wear it in certain countries. In other countries, that's not culture, that's not part of the sunnah. So we need to establish and distinguish the difference between what's culture and what is Islam. And of course, how do we know what's Islam? Quite simply, by following Quran and Sunnah. And everything else that is going against it is rejected. And of course, we use wisdom if we deal with such issues. And today, inshallah, we'll have some guests that we're going to be talking about it, inshallah. Today, in the first part of this show, I'm going to introduce Brother Abdul Mateen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you,
brother? How are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah, great. Doing
very
well.
Young, mashallah, very energetic. May Allah reward you coming on the show.
Ameen.
And later on, we'll have some more guests. And
inshallah, yeah.
Let's start about what do we mean, culture versus Islam?
I think it's a very global phenomenon that we as youth, and as I'm sure you as adults as well, face.
Wait, brother, I'm youth too.
I mean, yeah,
don't forget, in Islam,
age is just a number, yeah.
In Islam, you're young until 40.
Yeah.
And I am under 40.
Alhamdulillah.
Well, of course, you're younger than me. May Allah reward you.
Of course, yeah. So basically what I'm trying to say is we all face it. All of us are exposed to it. Whether before it used to be maybe a couple of decades ago, it may be only if you go out. So those who stay in their home would be relatively safe. But now, subhanAllah, we have our internet, we have our TV, we have our smartphones, we have all our devices. So you can be anywhere in the world and you can be exposed to any sort of things. So a new test and new trials and tribulations and new things to watch out for us as Muslims has appeared, I guess.
It's a broad term, of course. Like we said,
Definitely.
so many trials and tribulations are coming for this, for ummah basically, and it's really a test.
Exactly.
And of course, one of the things for us is we will not enter Jannah until we are purified.
Definitely.
And some ulama, they say, most ulama, they say, the trials and tribulations in this life, regardless of how bad they look, they are actually purifying us.
They're beautiful
exactly. So we have to remind ourselves of that. Okay. That being said, let's focus a little bit more now on culture and Islam, or culture versus Islam.
Definitely. One of the particular aspects, and I'm sure we'll discuss this in much more detail with some of perhaps their stories and the experiences that our guests have faced once in the second part of this show. But especially coming from our own national culture, if you could call it that. I think we've brought it down into three main different parts of culture. One is your national culture, which
Yes.
obviously from your origin.
Exactly, as we said earlier, where you come from.
Exactly. And the second culture is our social culture, where we're living in. For example, we're living in a Muslim country with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that is the second culture that we're talking about. And the third is the 21st century culture, which is most likely one of my favorite sheikhs. He said that it's called a mall culture. For example, he gave a story that he was here in Dubai and he visited a mall, and he went to another part of the world and he went to a mall and he couldn't differentiate between the two. So we almost had a parallel cultures, a global culture of based on what you see on media and what people read on the magazines, that has generally enveloped the globe, as you said very clearly in the first part of the show, about a global village. Exactly. Yeah. A melting pot of cultures, if you could say. But yes, so we have three main fronts, or three main
just to differentiate, having a global village doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
I totally agree.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
But we just have to distinguish.
Exactly.
Most of the things are good. Because one of the things some ulama used to say, how do you get to know and how do you educate yourself, is by knowing other nations. And this is in the Quran, isn't it?
Exactly.
And in translation of the meaning goes, Allah has created you in different nations, in different languages, of course different nations that speak different languages, different tribes, so that you may get to know each other. Meaning that the more you get to know each other, the better off you will be about. Because people who are the most ignorant are the ones who are ignorant about others.
Definitely.
And Islam teaches us, and why is Hajj so important? And we just finished Hajj, we just have to say that, subhanAllah. Can you imagine this, ya akhi? I mean, Islam has been here for what, 1400 years plus, right? 1400 plus years. And Hajj has been going on ever since. And Hajj itself was a melting pot every year for the last 1400 years. So you can talk about a global village, maybe in the last 50, 100 years, as in that so many different nations come to different cities living together, like in Dubai here, or New York, or wherever. Yeah? But subhanAllah, being said, Hajj has been that for the last 1400 years.
Definitely.
And it's an amazing thing.
Exactly.
So people who live there, for example, Bosnia, if they want to make it to Hajj for next year, they would actually have to leave right now. It was 100 years ago. They will have to walk, or horses, or whatever. And they will have to come back, take another year. So you're talking about a 2-year journey, and you get to know so many people, so many nations, so many, you could say, not rituals,
traditions.
so many habits of traditions of people. Yet, and you stay in Hajj, and you stay, I mean, in Mecca and Medina, probably for a month, they usually stay, 2 months even. If they reach early, they stay a very long time, and they get to mix and get to know each other. Definitely. And that's an amazing thing. This is a big plus, of course, of this, of like we said, this global village that we're talking about.
One of the examples I just thought about while you were talking about was one of the cultures, you know the famous Sahaba Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. I guess this goes one time, he invited the Prophet ﷺ for a meal, and I believe he had a desert lizard. So the Prophet ﷺ refrained from eating that meal.
Yes.
And so he asked him, is this haram? The Prophet ﷺ said, no, this is not haram, I just prefer not to eat it. Then you realize, even though they were Arabs and they lived together even in that time, they had a variety of cultures and they were complementing each other.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember that Rasulullah grew up in a city.
Exactly.
Even though in his childhood he was living in a desert, but maybe he was not exposed to it as much as others. And that region is a small region, and yet you were saying that there was such a difference in people's habits,
exactly.
which are totally accepted. And this is one of the examples that you said is totally fine. Now, let's come back to now. And let's focus more on some of the, you could say, wrong things, or some of the things that are not complying with Islam, that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll get to know more, as I said, once the guests come, and we can specify on some of the experiences that they've faced. However, starting from what you said, one of the one of the signs, I believe, of the Day of Judgment is how open and easy it will be to do sins and stuff that is haram. The haram will become much more easier than the halal. And we can clearly see that happening with the influx of culture. And I think it's one of our responsibilities as Muslims to
you know, a lot of times, you were talking about different cultures, of course. Not many cultures bring all the sins, right?
I agree. I definitely agree.
Certain cultures do. Other cultures, they actually intend well, and they mean well. It's just sometimes they confront with Islam. For example, we always have new Muslims coming to Islam in North America or in Europe. And one of the things we tell the converts, or reverts, which is more appropriate thing to say, to call them actually, reverts. Because we all were born Muslim, right?
Definitely.
So that's why we say revert, right? Amazing thing, we always tell them, because they come to us, and they are with us, they are brothers now, okay? So we're in the masjid, and the masjid, mashallah, is like you said, a melting pot itself. There's like 10, 15, 20 different nationalities, 15, 20, 30 different languages, okay, being spoken around and whatnot. So there's so many things, and yet a lot of people bring their culture with them, and that culture is not complying with Islam. So we tell them, it's quite simply, we have to go for a break soon, is a simple formula. Once you understand the difference between culture, what is culture and what is Islam, because some people think culture is Islam.
Definitely.
And that's a problem. And those people who think culture is Islam, and you can actually distinguish what actually Islam is versus culture, you'll be okay.
That's an amazing point. I'm sure we want to elaborate that once we get back from the break.
So we have to go for a short break, and we will see you, inshallah, in a few minutes.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, He says.
We can't just take knowledge and keep it as information. We have to transfer it into action. When he got up, he said one thing. Asalla nas? Did the people pray? In Hajj, for example, the primary example of how multiculturalism really looks like. All equal. I've got a dentist in Canada. Even though he's ripping holes in my teeth, he's got great akhlaq. I love visiting him. Identify the issue. Analyze it. Challenge it. And then try again. Because if you fail, big deal. Try again and keep trying.
If I think I lost my ablution, but I'm not sure, do I have to make wudu again? Is it allowed for Muslims to visit the graveyard, or is that shirk? Am I allowed to say Jummah Mubarak to someone? Can I get to know a sister before marriage? I have so many questions, and I feel that I've just reached a dead end. If only I could find someone trustworthy to answer my questions. Someone who speaks based on proof from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, He said.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to our show today at Time to Please Allah. I'm your replacement host, Almir. Very hard to pronounce my name. Smajlovic, Smilovic, Smajlovic, whatever you want, that's fine. And as you can see, here we have, mashallah, all the guys who are younger than me. So youth, but still I consider myself youth.
Definitely.
Because I'm under the 40, please, remember
We
that?
talked about that.
All right. And we are all from different countries. Some of us are, living here for a long time. We lived in different places. We are basically nomads. Even subhanAllah, in psychology actually, there's a term called, for people who do not live in one place, who keep moving, they call it the people of the third culture.
Exactly.
Third culture, meaning that you have no home. And that's what I feel, When I left Bosnia in 1992, I've been on the move ever since. Every 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, we've been going somewhere. Even though if it's maybe moving in the same country, we move to a different, place to live and so on. So I've been always on the move. In the last 7 years, I moved like every year and a half to a new area or maybe new country. So really, we have this, I would say, a third culture, and I'm sure for all of you. So today we have our brother Azim, and brother Harib, and our brother Imad, who are going to share some of their stories. And of course, brother Abul Mateen, who was in the first part of our show.
Alhamdulillah.
So Jazakum khair for coming. We appreciate you coming. So let's just get to the gist of the topic, which is culture versus Islam. And we mentioned just before, we talk about how important is this, for example, a new Muslim. Okay, because they're new, they don't know anything about, Muslims, or maybe they're new, they just found out about Islam. How important is for them to understand culture versus Islam. And we even ourselves, as Muslims who are born Muslim, we're all born Muslim, I presume, correct?
Alhamdulillah.
So even we had to learn some of it. So Azim, you can start and introduce yourself and tell us more about it, inshallah.
All right, sure. My name is Azim, for those of you that don't know me. My name is Azim Merchant. I was born and brought up in Dubai and in Canada as well. So I've been staying in Canada and in Dubai. I did most of my education here as well as in Canada. And I'm of course originally Indian. All right, so I come from an Indian background.
So you talk about third culture right there. So
Yeah.
Indian, Dubai, Canada, back to Dubai.
Kind of an identity crisis.
That's what I'm saying.
What I'm saying.
Welcome to the
I
club.
think we all go through it.
Welcome
Yeah,
to the club.
I know. Because you're staying here, you're born, brought up here, you study here in the schools, and then you go to Canada.
What's an interesting thing?
Yeah.
Same thing with my wife. She's Bosnian. She lived in Germany for 5 years, moved to Canada, moved to Saudi, moved here. It's like, everywhere. So, we moved as a family and stuff. And sometimes we ponder and we think, how would it be if we just lived in one place all of our lives? Sometimes we miss that, right? Because,
True.
Do you feel like that?
Of course, definitely. When people ask me where you're from, I kind of start putting my finger here. All right, Canada. No, I can't really say that. I'm Indian originally. I look Indian, so I can't really say I'm Canadian.
What does it mean you look Indian, brother?
Trying to find out which one's best.
Yeah, exactly.
According to
Do you
them.
know what it is? It's like people ask me, where are you from? I said, from Bosnia. But he said, you speak English with an American accent. I said, okay, I'm
I'm
from
American.
Canada. So if I tell them I'm from Canada, they say, okay, but where are you from originally?
Yeah, that's what people really want to know. That's what
so
people
it's like
really
whatever
wanna
you
ask.
answer,
They're going to ask you. Yeah, they're going to ask you that, okay, where
That's
are you
okay,
from
bro.
originally? So
Yeah.
I get straight to the point. I'm from India, originally. Never stayed there. If I go there, I don't know the place, but I'm still from
So
there.
you'll be hustled when you go back.
Exactly, and I did. I did get hustled many times.
Oh yeah. No, that's a culture right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that brings us back to, of course, culture versus religion and how it clashes. In terms of, of course, I wanna talk more about what you mentioned earlier, that if you can identify Islam from your culture and you can point your finger at what's what, you've got it solved. To be honest, because you have so many how do you call it? So many things that you do as per your culture, as per what your parents have taught you, or your forefathers have taught you, or your grandmother, or your cousins, so on and so forth. So they've taught you something, and you've been seeing them do it over the years since you've grown up, and then suddenly you learn that Islam forbids something of that sort, or Islam does not allow. Yeah,
we are not saying that what they did is wrong.
Of course,
we are saying is maybe this is what they do best.
Yes.
So we have to clarify that.
Of course,
because people say, if you say something like that about my dad or my grandparents, so all their lives they were at fault. No, we don't say that.
Of course. No, I mean,
I'm just saying for the audience,
Sure,
because
sure.
they will. Some people will think like that,
Of course, of course.
because they will have also the global audience watching the show.
Yeah,
inshallah.
sure.
I think perhaps, Imad, you can give some of your experiences that you've faced, and then Azim can come back.
Of course.
Yeah.
Just like he said, like when, like for a new Muslim, like Brother Alamir said, like when he becomes a new Muslim, like he has his family back home, he has to like coordinate with them, and he should like talk with them and meet up with them. So like in their culture, it's like men like mixed, like men and women together, like talking.
Free mixing, exactly.
Free mixing,
Yes.
yeah, free mixing and talking with each other, having games, and like telling them about yourself. So yeah, that's it.
That culture is everywhere.
Yeah,
This
that's
mixing
true,
part.
huh?
Exactly.
That's
And
true.
you're from Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
right? So actually, if you think about it, Sri Lanka, India, Muslims are minority in those countries. We're living in a Muslim country that's majority Muslim, so a little bit different.
Well, that's not
Isn't
exactly true. I mean, I would say Muslims make up a huge part of India. So I
No,
mean,
true, but overall they're minority if you think about it. Let's say even if they make up 30%, they're still a minority.
Yeah,
More.
they,
Yeah,
they,
of
do-
course.
they make around 15%.
Yeah. Different statistics say, some say 10, some say 20, some say 15, 30, whatever.
and then
Anyway,
of course the
it's-
different sects and stuff like that. So this is a long story.
Exactly,
So we don't want to get into that.
But I'm saying is,
Of course.
what does it mean being a minority? Meaning that you can get influenced easily by
Other
majority.
Other people.
True.
Other cultures and other religions, in fact.
And that's the thing about even friendship, isn't it? I just had a brother I was talking to a few days ago who came back to Islam, okay? And he said, how did he come back to Islam? He said, why didn't he change his friends? As simple as that.
Yes.
But the issue with him was he had to also change the city or country he was living in. You understand? So meaning that he had to leave those friends. Not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it like that for him. He left those friends because he wanted to immigrate. And therefore Allah opened the door for him. He met good people and then he came back to Deen.
Of course. Subhanallah.
So I think this is an important thing. So same concept works in a country level or the place you come from.
Of course.
So tell us some of the examples, Azim,
Definitely.
that
I mean,
you can come
this
with.
is something you took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
It's cool. It's cool. So basically, I mean, like you mentioned, friends. Okay, and I think there's a hadith that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said that your company is what defines you as a man, as a
Or
person.
you are who you with.
Yeah, exactly. You are what you eat, and you are who you're with, basically.
Yes.
So I mean, what happened? I mean, with me, and there have been many examples, and my friends as well. Once the circle of friends that you're with is no longer there, which is really hard to get out of in the first place. But once they're not there, subhanallah, once that changes, you start to follow what your friends, the new friends, start to do. If you make friends that are, alhamdulillah, more into deen, this helps a lot. Definitely, it helps a lot to get away from these kind of issues as such when you're with your older friends.
Harib, so do you face
Yeah.
issues like these? You must have a friend circle back in school or in your social life.
Yes, I do. My school is co-ed, so sometimes we do encounter with stuff like this.
Gender interaction.
Yeah, when some teachers they put us next to other gender people, and
Imad, you had a similar experience, I believe.
Yeah, like sometimes when we have shows, like suppose, right. So recently we just had a few shows, and it was like boys versus girls. So like whoever won, they would like either tease the boys and girls would tease the boys. Get it right? So like the boys won, and they went and they started teasing the girls, and then they started talking back, and they eventually ended up like being like too friendly.
Eve teasing, and Brother Alamir, to be honest, I mean, from real Indian culture, teasing is definitely, especially
Yes,
from
part of the culture.
is not exactly part of the Indian culture. So when even though they relatively psycho
There's
Indian,
evolution. Things change.
that's why I said
Shaitan
we have
works
three
on evolution.
spheres. We have
So,
a modern new culture
yeah.
coming up.
Now this is let's make something very clear. all these examples are good, and this happens on a level at your workplace. Because I'm working, for example, you guys are going to school, it's different, okay? So at your school, workplace, on the street, these are fine. I mean, these things happen. They're not fine, but these things happen. Now, I want to ask you guys examples from things that people think that is Islam, and that they practice it that may not be complying with Islam. Those are the examples we're looking for, so for audience to see. So if you can, for example, I'll give you one example just to start off. I was praying Salah, okay? I came to the masjid. It was a small masjid. Even sometimes we call it musalla back in Canada. And sometimes I would lead the prayer. People would push me for it. Even though I don't know Quran much, but people would push me for it. And I usually resist. But that day it was only a few people, and they pushed me and they pushed me. It was like, so I went in to lead the prayer. In the second rak'ah, a brother joined, okay? And after Salah was finished, he asked me, because I didn't wear the taghiyah, he asked me, why don't you wear the taghiyah? And why are you wearing a t-shirt? Short sleeve and so on. I said, this is totally fine. He said, no, it's not acceptable.
Taghiyah is what
Taghiyah
we
is
call in the
kufi.
tupi. Yeah,
Kufi or head covering.
Tupi. Exactly.
So
yeah.
we start talking, and he said, do you know that the salah is not, there's a iffiness, or you could say a doubt about salah if you don't have a kufi, or do you not have a tupi, or head covering? And I said, no, this is not valid. Of course, like I said, this is like we said earlier, in some cultures, if this worn, it's good for you to wear it. You should wear it. But it's not an obligation, and it's not a part of your prerequisites for salah. You understand? Yet, we started discussing, it became an argument. And I knew this was not going to lead anywhere. So I asked him one thing before I left, because he kept going on and on. I said, are you going to pray Salat al-Maghrib again? Because it was Salat al-Maghrib, Maghrib prayer. And he said, yes, I will. Meaning that this person thinks, okay, that this is acceptable. I mean, this is not acceptable and so on. So this is what we're talking about. These are kind of examples that people think it's Islam. Meanwhile, we cannot say it's culture or not, but depending on the region, like we said, you live in.
Of course.
I think one of the things that we can all relate with, especially us coming from an Indo region culture, is
can we call it Desi culture?
I prefer not to call it that, but okay.
I know, but just for us outsiders,
Yeah,
it's
funny.
I'm sorry. Just
yeah. Anyway,
because in Canada, he knows. Okay, back in university, when there was a party, okay, and there was posters everywhere around the university. Of course, we did not attend, but we saw the posters. They said Daisy party. So I said I was ignorant and I was learning. I said, what is Daisy? Oh, all the subcontinent. Everybody who knows Urdu, Hindi, who speaks and stuff like that. So you talk about Pakistani, Indian, Bengali, and so on. So that's what I'm saying, Daisy. So I apologize.
Yeah,
but anyway.
No problem. Yeah, but I think one of the most popular things that we all face is free mixing with the cousins, especially when, for example, when we go back home during the summer or winter vacations. We want to meet our family. We haven't seen them in a year, sometimes even more than that.
I think that's a great example, because cousins in Islam, of course, are not mahram, right?
Exactly.
Precisely.
So, even in Bosnia, for example, cousins are considered to us brothers and sisters. Like we cannot marry them according to Bosnian tradition. Of course, according to Islamic rules, yes, we can. And it was very hard for me, for example, to establish that I cannot, when I see my cousins, even though we grew up like a brother and sister, that I cannot hug them, the female ones, of course.
Okay.
That I cannot actually be with them. And that was very hard for them to accept, especially if they're not practicing Islam. Let alone to even tell them that it's allowed to marry them. You know what I'm saying? So what about you guys? What do you face?
Have you faced that? Yeah.
Well, definitely. I mean, you guys must have faced that.
Yeah, it's like if you go towards them and you don't talk to them, you stay away and you use Islam, you be Islamically stay away from them. They'll they'll say stuff behind your back. They'll be like, he doesn't like us, he's changed, he wants to be away from us.
Yeah, that's
You're a stranger.
They'll keep you away.
Family,
they'll keep you like a stranger. They'll keep you away from stuff.
Arab, you've had a huge family, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, especially like Indian families. When we're at home and stuff as visiting, if they would, for example, Eid, they'll come to us, they'll want to shake your hand, and then you would say, no, I cannot, and something like that, they would say, like behind your back, they wouldn't say it to your face, they would say, oh, Har was being rude, he's doing this, and they'll start thinking in a wrong way.
You know where the problem occurs, I feel, Al-Amir, is when what happens is that when the parents get together and the cousins and the kids are, mixing, which of course is not supposed to happen, but yet it does happen. And then, subhanAllah, at times I've seen my mother, she doesn't like what's happening, but then she has to go with the flow because she can't butt in and be the odd one out and say
Yes.
that, okay, no, guys, stop it. Sisters go into the other room and brothers in this room. So I'm not really sure how we can tackle this issue with regards to, again, culture, jumping in, and then Islam as well. So how do we, what do you think we could actually use to divide or to actually...
You have to, I'm speaking from experience, you have to use wisdom. You have to show them that Islam is a nice, way of life. It's a beautiful religion, we call it a way of life. And that is compatible with everyone. So you have to show them that you can live the life. But of course you have to advise them. But you cannot be harsh either. So when you come to such a situation, you should not just leave and let them be and ignore them and be rude to them. You just have to initially establish limits.
Correct.
That's the main thing, establishing limits. And they will respect that. They will respect
exactly.
that.
I just wanted
Establishing
to
limits,
totally
because
agree.
you respect that, you are firm, and you say, look, you're my family, you're my cousins, you are still very important in my life. Doesn't mean I have to mix with you and eat dinner with you and so on, but at the same time, I have to show you that I love you because you're my family. You love them because you're cousins. You have to still protect them. They are kin and kinship.
True.
And our Islam commands us to do that. But at the same time, we have to establish limits and guidelines. And they will respect it. What does that mean? Does that mean you butt in a big gathering and you establish those limits at that time? No. Maybe you do that individually beforehand. So you have to be firm and do
Step
this
by
over the
step.
years. Yes.
Or maybe like create an environment. I think that effect has shown a lot of positive results, especially since, of course, even we have family back in India, and we've always maintained an environment. Okay, for example, the men sit in this room, the ladies sit in this room, the boy cousins sit in this room, and the girl cousins sit in that room.
So mashallah, I need 4 rooms, brother.
At least, or at least we give them different spaces, maybe in the backyard or in the front yard, or maybe the boy cousins can go out and play while the girl cousins sit at home. They create an environment, and once the environment comes into play, people are really, and I agree with you completely, that if you tell them in a loving manner, in a delicate manner, that according to Islam, we are not exactly supposed to be so frivolous and be so casual with each other because we are non-mahrams. I'm sure you have much more topics we can talk about.
So before we come back to those points, we'll take a short, quick break, inshallah, and we'll see you with the final part of our show today. And inshallah, we'll give you some more examples. And please do call us if you are able to, or if you want to call us, or maybe you don't feel like it, that's fine too. We're not offended. Jazakumullah khair. See you in a few minutes.
Please Allah, a chance to gain reward I will spend on you, he says.
يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا حي يا قيوم لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين اللهم أحسن عاقبتنا في الأمور كلها وأجرنا من خزي الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها معادنا واجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير واجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر
try to recap what we do here at Huda TV for the past week, and we try to share with you some of the latest news that is happening behind the scenes here at the station.
Living Islam would love a cooking show to be aired for Arabic dishes. Also more programs for children regarding manners.
We want to go ahead and take a look at our YouTube page right now and see how it looks as it stands. Well, I'm on the screen right now, but I'm not on TV. I'm actually through YouTube, as you can see right there. It's the same exact thing that you see on TV here live. It's exactly the same thing that is on our YouTube page through our live streaming. A great way to stay in touch with us.
It's my first time to call Huda TV, but I like it too much.
Because there is no program in Huda TV that it is not important for our Muslims, inshallah.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he said.
Welcome back to our last part of our show today, inshallah. And like we said, we have our youth here, mashallah. Once again, all younger than me. And we also have Brother Shah here. Welcome. I guess we don't have enough chairs for everybody to sit down.
Yeah, that's sadly technical issues.
Alhamdulillah. Well, if I was sitting on that chair, maybe two of me could only sit. So, I mean, on that sofa. So, alhamdulillah, you guys can fit, so that's a good thing. We wanted to talk about now, tackle the issue of, I think it's very important, and we understand this is a global culture, a global village, and we understand that all of these things have become normal. But people think it's normal, but we want to emphasize on things that people practice that they think it's Islam. But actually it's not, it's culture. And we want to emphasize that they believe this because they don't know any better, right? So we need to emphasize.
One of the biggest examples of that, I think I can relate to, and I'm sure you guys can join in after this, is the practice of going and visiting maqbaras and graveyards and asking for Sufi saints or whatever, saints and peers, I don't know how exactly. Peers, yeah, exactly.
Peer. Like back in my country, there are people who they grow trees on top of this, put plants on top, and they say that this many trees will grow. And sometimes they cover with a different cloth, and they write stuff, and they do many stuff that I cannot say anything towards them because I'm the only one, and they're all in one side. So it's be like I'll be like the stranger out of them all.
But one of the other examples is that people spend so much money on this. You know, I think it was on this show. I mean, a couple of months back that Sheikh Ismail Bullock and Gabriel Al-Romaani, when they did the.
By the way, just say Brother Ismail Bullock, because he will object to that.
Yeah, he will. Yeah.
So brother of all brothers.
Brother Ismail Bullock and brother. Yeah, I think Brother Gabriel Al-Romaani, he said that. When he comes across these people who go for the graves and they actually go touch it, and the guy over there, he touches them, and then he touches the grave and he touches them, they give them money, and they have specially made like these deep pockets to fill themselves with money, and they spend a lot of money on these. I mean, they travel from all over India, for example, or all over the world just to come to these special places where they have these graves, and they actually believe this is pilgrimage.
They sincerely believe that this is going to benefit them. Yeah. And that's the problem. That they believe this is Islam, meanwhile it's not.
They equate it to Hajj as an almost sometimes.
Yeah. It's rampant, especially across India. You have shrines, like they spend a lot of money just making it look amazing. And there's this place, many might know it, it's called Haji Ali. It's in Mumbai.
In Bombay,
you must have heard of it.
I've seen it. Yeah.
And subhanallah, this place is a bit down in the lake. So I mean, there's just one pathway that goes straight down, and the masjid. They built a masjid in the sea. All right, and it's like the Burj Al Arab. Yeah. You know, it's a bit outside.
No, it's an attraction.
Exactly. They made it an attraction, and so many people visit it. Now, you don't only have Muslims. There are non-Muslims that go there as well, and they believe at times that if you ask I mean, there's a grave there of someone who was very important previously
back in the day.
And they believe if you ask him with some rituals and stuff like that, you might end up getting what you wanted, what you asked for. So, subhanallah, they believe this, and this is only one part of India, which is Mumbai. There are so many other places where people actually, I've heard of people going in the train, all right, going in a train in India, across India, and then there was a man who made sujood in the train. So there was a brother that asked him that, why are you making sujood? He said, there's a grave of so-and-so here, nearby in this village, and I wanted to,
And he had to time it.
Yeah, exactly.
It had to be this second, this minute,
That
because
minute.
you know what? If he misses a bus, the train is
Exactly,
moving.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, subhanallah.
But I think another problem that arises from that is a lot of non-Muslims, their exposure to Islam is based on that. So
And that's exactly that.
They
what
think
believe.
Islam.
For example, honor killings.
Wonderful example.
Nothing to do with Islam.
Exactly.
The world is focusing on honor killings a lot. I mean, with stuff that is happening around the world.
SubhanAllah, very important thing we have to discuss is that adultery, for example, major point of honor killings in Pakistan. I don't know how prevalent it's in India, maybe less than Pakistan. Pakistan is known for that. Afghanistan is known for that. Some African Muslim countries. What we say that Muslim countries, Muslims who live there, who practice this, but this is not from Islam. They say that this such a girl talked to such a boy, or maybe there was a relationship, yet there was no proof of the relationship.
Hearsay, it's all
and this
hearsay.
is an amazing thing. Ulama, they say, really, if you think about it, how many people actually witnessed adultery being committed? It's very rare to see.
Yeah.
So the punishment is not there because it's almost so hard to prove. Yet people in such countries, because certain individual's younger sister, was seen talking to a boy on the street. You don't know. Maybe
And plus, that's vigilante justice. I don't think that's correct.
I think we have a phone call. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, how are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. My question is about, in terms of relatives and family, and how you talked about how it's important to make sure we have this kind of relationship with our family where we tell them that Islamically it's not right to intermingle with the opposite gender, in terms of cousins and relatives and so on. But sometimes being Islamic and telling them, even in a nice manner, can sometimes sever the ties between the relationships of cousins and aunts and uncles. So do we let that happen? If that's the
No,
result
you know
of
what?
it-
I tell you from sister. Don't mind me asking you, where are you calling us from? So we just.
Dubai. I'm
Oh,
from
Dubai. Okay. Very good point. But from my experience, is how do you win the hearts of your cousins, of your family relatives? You establish these ties, and I'm telling you right now, I've been visiting back home for so many years. And back where I come from, in the village I come from, nobody's praying, nobody's fasting. Most of the people are drinking. There's nothing from Islam whatsoever.
They're all Muslims?
Well,
Basically.
they have
Names,
Muslim names.
say.
They call themselves Muslims. We're not going to go into that. It's a very, very touchy topic. For example, some of my uncles don't even go for Eid prayer, let alone Jum'ah. Okay, let me just give you an example. So if you tell them you're going to sever tie or you cannot intermingle and so on, they will not like it, of course. But from experience, what I found out, gifts soften hearts. You come every time for the last 10 years. I've been visiting for the last 17 years. But I decided last 10, 12 years ago, I will not be talking about Islam much because it doesn't register with them. So what I do is I just show them the goodness, bring gifts, visit your families, visit your father's uncles, all distant relatives. So in like 5 days I spend there, I am in 25 different places. Meaning that you can do this, and people eventually will win the heart, and then they will say to you like this, Wallahi al-Azim, they will say to me, they will say to other brothers, this is not my example only, they will say, but you know what, you're a Wahhabi, or I don't know, you have a beard like Wahhabis, but you act like different. And I say to them, no, those brothers act the same like I do, but you don't give them a chance. But because I'm your family, you kind of know me when I was a child, so you kind of welcome me, and this wins their hearts. And slowly but surely, we will maybe pray together, or we'll talk about something. Maybe their children will come to Islam. I think this, hopefully I answered your question, sister, is yes, you may feel that there severs the ties, but they will react to you maybe in such a way. But don't cut your ties. Don't take it personally. At that moment, maybe it seems like that, but you have to insist Jazakallah khair for
I
that.
think I just want to add one more point to what you said, and I totally agree with you. And I think once we go back home and when we visit our relatives, is show them that you're a better Muslim. For example, you're generous with them. They see you praying on time. They see you not missing salah. They see you that, for example, you know a bit of Quran. You know you've been doing good deeds, and you do it with them. Don't say just because they're there, you know what, they might get offended, so I won't go pray now. I'll delay the prayer. No.
I'll get back to you. We have another phone call. Sister Maryam from Emirat. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, sister, go ahead.
I was just thinking about, like you said, about the third world thing and how we are all in this lost global village. The hadith of the Prophet clearly says he says that fear Allah wherever you are and follow up a bad deed with a good deed. I think this is the solution for everything.
Oh, no, definitely agreed upon. When we are talking about third culture, we're meaning to say, where do we belong, as in where do we live? Do I settle here? Do I settle there?
Isn't it more being important as being a Muslim than anything else?
No, of course. We didn't say that. I don't think, did we say that?
No.
I think it was a misunderstanding. We were just talking about...
No, but I think, as a solution, we should put ourselves as Muslims first.
No, of course. Islam is
Very
first.
right, brother.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for that.
Jazakallah khair.
Okay. I think maybe we didn't clarify ourselves properly. We're trying to say third culture is as in the sense that it's actually a term. It's a term in psychology. People who are moving a lot. Not culture as in, you're cultural, not Islamic. No, we're not saying that.
Culture
We're
and
saying
Islam is totally different.
Exactly. No, we're saying that culture, third culture means the people who are not settled someplace, they're moving around a lot. Like they're nomads. That's what it is. Come back to that. You know what Hassan al-Basri used to say when he used to come out of his house? And this is a very important thing for us to understand. He used to come out of his house and he used to say, I think that everyone I see, they're better Muslim than me. So when we go and visit those places, if some people are praying and stuff like that, we have to think of themselves as equal, or maybe they're better than us. So we have to humble ourselves, and this is the main important thing. Brother Shahiz is here with us. We didn't get back to you. So how are you, first of all? I'm sorry not to get back to you because we're talking too much. Maybe I'm talking too much.
Culture.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, brother. So, Brother Shahiz, tell us from your experience some of the examples, culture versus Islam.
I think culture and Islam, like, for example, if we follow Islam perfectly, it's the way of life. I think culture is just an idea of people creating an idea of differently. For like culture is just man-made, like people of atheist or agnostic, they created culture. But for us, Islam is there, and Islam is the right way to follow. It's complete religion. So if we follow Islam, if we follow the Sunnah, I think Quran and the Sunnah, I think that's the perfect way to go.
And we also have to clarify that Islam, whatever it does not clash with Islam, it's acceptable, isn't it?
Exactly.
So, for example, if it's from culture that when you come visit somebody, you bring food, right? Does that go against Islam? No, it doesn't. That's totally acceptable.
If it's compromising the religion, then that's against.
They're just giving an example. So I think that's very important. Another thing, for example, I want to give you one example. Maybe you guys can also reiterate for some of the others. People back home, back in that region, Balkans and Turkey, for example, they believe that after Salah, Fard Salah in the masjid, you should be reciting adhkar, remembrance of Allah, out loud in a group.
Yeah, that happens in India as well.
Oh, really?
Like
people believe this is from Islam, and if you don't do it, you get rejected in a way, isn't it?
People look at you differently.
People say that if you after the Salah, they raise their hands and they make dua.
Yeah, that's what we do. Like they do that. They don't do adhkar, but they raise their hands and they do the dua
in a group.
In a whole group.
The Imam
which there's no proof for.
Everyone else says
Ameen. Exactly. The Imam turns around and starts asking for dua, and people say Ameen.
After that.
Now, you see what happens is that people start frowning upon things that you do or you do differently because they have been practicing it a certain way for so long. So when you don't do it, or when you do something differently, they would of course look at you as an alien, as a stranger. And then they would say, oh, bid'ah, or this, and that. They would use strong words as such. But then again, we have forgotten that, subhanallah, everything has its dalil. Everything is available on the internet. You want to go and find out, there is sahih hadith where you want to go and check whether you should pray adhkar or whether you should do group du'as, or these kind of things. So we forget that, okay, we can take out some time from a day and from our daily lives and try and learn, educate ourselves on what exactly should we do after salah. Is what our imam doing correct or not? This kind of thing.
And how you deal with that, that's another issue.
Yeah. True, of course, definitely, I agree.
So I think one of the main ways we can combat this is education and raising awareness.
Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, had a book. Are you allowed to pray behind for example, a Sufi? Or praying behind somebody who may be deviant in certain ways and so on. And he said it's allowed. And he was saying why? Because it's wisdom to show the people, you understand? To show the people, to bring them back to Islam, not to reject them and abandon them. And this applies to our families, where we come from, in our regions, in our countries, in our villages.
I agree.
Okay? So we have to be the example for them. And because we are the ones, inshallah, who carry the truth, we ask Allah for that.
Amen.
That being said, we have to be an example for them and show them and be humble. Humble is a very important thing.
Of course. You just spoke about praying behind someone, so I remembered something with regards to culture and Islam again. Now, I'm not sure how many of our audience or even you guys have been going to malls in the recent past, and when it's time for Salah, you go to the prayer room, all right? And I've noticed this has happened every time with me whenever we go to the prayer room, is that when it's time for Salah, we see the person who's bearded or wearing kandura, they push him forward. But what is the sunnah? I know this. I've done some research, and what I've understood from sunnah is that the person who has memorized most of the Quran has the right to lead.
Exactly.
Okay. After him is the person who knows the tafsir and the Quran, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are 5 conditions.
Yes, Islamic knowledge basically.
Yeah. But subhanAllah, I have felt this thing as an embarrassing thing to actually ask a person, okay, when you're in a mall, it's time for Salah, let's say for example Maghrib, and there's not enough time, you need to start Jama'ah because there are people, and then you're not going to debate with the guy if you know more Quran than him or he knows more Quran than you. So what they do is they just push the person who looks more Islamic.
Looks the part, yeah.
Exactly.
But not
we should be fixed. Anyway, we've come to an end. SubhanAllah, went very quick, huh?
Wow, I just remember we're just sitting here right now.
I know. Anyway, quickly, we have like a minute left, literally. Final thoughts, starting from my right, Azim.
Sure, I mean, definitely, number one, like I mentioned earlier, to educate ourselves is a great thing, you know. We have a huge resource.
Educating and practicing what you're learning also.
What you learn. Not only sharing, because what we see many times, you get a message on WhatsApp, which is sahih, which is correct, and then you just forward it to like 20 contacts.
And then you bother all the people.
Exactly. Ping with the rest of the contacts. But you don't follow it. So,
I think we should be role models for others. As a Muslim, we should be like, do good deeds and like be good to others, spoke in a humble manner. So that could like influence them in a way that they could want to learn from us how this is
effective. They will ask questions. Yes, exactly. They'll be inquisitive, which is very important. Once they're inquisitive, that's where you get them.
When you show them the right light, they would be like interested and.
And where do we get them? We get them. We want them to go to Jannah with us, inshallah. Because we all have to aim for that.
Yeah, what I believe is that like if our base of Islam is strong, then everything after this would be like perfect. Even if the other people are against you, they would.
And you never take it personal. Because you
never take it personally.
You are looking for Allah's approval only and His pleasure. Jazakallah khair.
I'd just like to finish with an ayah from Surah Al-Rum, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانُكُمْ. So basically Allah says that it is from His signs that Allah has created you with people speaking in a different way and people from different skin. So culture is mainly ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should welcome it with open arms, with the litmus test of Islam.
MashaAllah.
And inshallah we can have a beautiful life
point.
ahead.
Jazakallah khair for all of you guys. And just wanted to finish and clarify once again for Sister Maryam that asked us, culture, Islam comes first. What does the third culture mean? We just wanted to clarify, third culture is not as in culture as a name, just people who are nomads, who are living their life in different places, different continents, different countries. And Islam is first and everything comes after that. Brother Imad had a great point. Have your base, Islam, Quran, Sunnah, and you said about litmus test is an amazing thing. We all come from different cultures. We should have to have a litmus test. And may Allah reward you for coming in. I'm your replacement host for today. Next week, I don't know who's going to be here. We will find out, inshallah.
Yeah,
Let's keep it a surprise for next time. Jazakumullah khair for coming and joining us. And we ask Allah to forgive us if we make any mistakes. And please comment on our Facebook. There's on Time to Please Allah. If there is anything that we missed, anything that you feel we may have spoken against or spoken for. Jazakumullah khair. We'll see you inshallah next week.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, He says, all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn His reward. Don't forget the